This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Abam. So this past week we did a Sugya Chamura about Bitul. This was a shaila that somebody by the name of Yishmael asked, Ish Kfar Yama asked from, doesn't say who he asked this question of, but he asked this question. He was hela biyadai, an onion that was uprooted in Shvius, was planted in the 8th year, and Rabu Gidulav Ali Karai. That was a Shaila Nun Zayin Amud Beis. So regarding this Shaila of Rabu Gidulai Ali Karai, the Ran started off this Sugya, Lav Dafka. When it says Rabu doesn't mean the majority, because there's no din of majority being mevatel something. The Ran said on Zayin Amud Beis, Lav Rabia Belchud Kamar. It's not only Roiv. Ela Ravia Shekiyoid Siba B'midi Da'asi Me'al Mahaya. It's a Ravia. It's a Ravia that it's sufficient that it could be mevatel. So if you're dealing with something that needs shishim, let's say shmita, then shishim. If it's something that needs 100, like truma, 100. If it's something that requires 200, then it's 200. So the Ran learned the whole sugya lav dafka, and why not? When you're dealing with roiv, there's a concept of aser b'noi sein tam, even though, by the way, Noisin tam is something that gives flavor, but here it's not really giving flavor. It's you have a bulb and then it's producing more. It's creating, it's growing more. But the Ran learned the sugya lav dafka roiv. We're dealing with bitul b'shishim or bitul b'meya or bitul b'trei meya kol echad lefi shiurai. The problem is that there are Rishonim that prove from later on in the Sugya that obviously we're not dealing with Bitul B'Shishim or Bitul B'Meya or Bitul B'Trei Meya. Namely the Tosfos Rid. The Tosfos Rid says that if you remember the Sugya on Nun Ches Amud Aleph, the Gemara said a different shiur. Let me see. The Gemara 2/3 of the way down on Nun Ches Amud Aleph, the Tnan, Bitzalim sheyardu aleim geshamim. Onions that the rain fell on and they grew. So imhayu alen shalahem shchayrin, if the leaves were black, asur and they're asur. Hayriku mutarin. If they turned pale, they're mutar. So what is this talking about? We're talking about onions of Shemitah that grew. So if the leaves were black, they're asur. If the leaves were black, mamish, they're asur. Why? This is moichiach that their gidul is yafeh. Right? The Ran said if they're black, then this shows it grows from the ground, and therefore they're asur. Mutter. If they're white, if they're pale, so then it's not yoinek from the karka, but it's from the onion, and it's mutter. But if it grew from the ground, it's asur. Wait a second. There's no roiv. I'm sorry. Do you see it up on the? Let me see. You see it up on the screen? Okay, that's the Gemara on Nun Chesam and Aleph. So the Tosfos Rit says that from here we see Asu Gidulei Heter Umalin Isser Oilai. Those Gidulei Heter are Mala the Isser or not. Says the Tosfos Rit, V'hakol mutaren. Everything is mutter. V'afal pi she'en levatloi b'shishim, even though we're not mevatel it with 60. Kila kaman. So look at the lashon of Tosfos Rit. The Tosfos Rit in the beginning of the Sugya says the Gidulei Heter Mal in the Isser, everything is mutter, even though ein levaloi b'shishim. We're not talking about where there's shishim. Dal kaman ki pashte mi b'tzalim shel shviyah sheyardu aleim geshamim b'shminas v'tzimchu. So we say if the olim are shiurim, or you could be toiler shit ba'oisna olim, they're mutter, even though there isn't shishim. The Ran learned the Sugya that no, we're talking about where there's shishim, but it seems like the Gemara brings cases that no, there isn't shishim. We're not dealing with Bitul b'shishim. So there's obviously another mahalach in the Rishonim to learn the Sugya. The Ran learns we're dealing with Bitul b'shishim. The Tosfos Rit says from some of these cases it seems that we're not dealing with shishim. We're not dealing with shishim. Okay. Now, the Reb Shimon Shkop has a very interesting Lomdus, why maybe we don't need shishim here. If you remember, by min b'she'enoi minoi, you need shishim edairaisa because it's nois ein tam. But we're not dealing with min b'she'enoi minoi. We're dealing with one onion. We're dealing with one growth. It's just part of it is mutter and part is asar. So that's called min b'minoi. Min b'minoi needs shishim midrabanan. Why? Atu einoi minoi. Atu einoi minoi. You might get confused if you say min b'minoi needs shishim. If you say, I'm sorry, the min b'minoi does not need shishim, then certainly min b'she'enoi minoi. I'm sorry, it's a gzeira. Min b'minoi needs shishim, lest you come to min b'she'enoi minoi. Lest you come to min b'she'enoi minoi. Says Rav Shimon Shkop, but maybe the requirement that min b'minoi needs shishim is only if you could come to confuse it with min b'she'enoi minoi. But every single case of gidulin, by definition, is going to be min b'minoi. How do you have gidulin unless it's growing out of at some item? So by definition, maybe we're only geyser min b'minoi if there's a makam to be geyser atu min b'she'enoi minoi. But if let's say there's no makam to be geyser by min b'she'enoi minoi, why? Because by the very definition of a case of gidulin, by definition is min b'minoi. You can't have one plant growing out of another plant. An onion's not going to produce a garlic's not going to produce an onion. An onion, shmita is going to grow out. In other words, the whole sugya of gidulin, by very definition, is dealing with min b'minoi. Maybe the chacham were never geyser that you need shishim by gidulin. So Rav Shimon Shkop says that's a possible approach why maybe you would not need kol echad lefi shiurai. The Ran learns you do need kol echad lefi shiurai, but that's maybe only by min b'minoi that you could confuse with min b'she'enoi minoi. But if you can confuse it, then maybe we would not apply this rule.
But do you still need a rive?
You still need a rive. Yes, you still need a rive. Then we go back to regular, biblical bitul b'rive. Bitul b'rive. The Chazon Ish has a whopper of an approach in the Sugya. And basically the Chazon Ish says that even though in the beginning of the Sugya started with Bitul b'shishim kol echad lefi shiurai, even though the Chazon Ish said kalecha lefi shiurai, nevertheless, the Gemara falls off of it. At what point does the Gemara fall off of it? Says the Chazon Ish, by the case of Shemitah. Says the Chazon Ish, even though in the beginning of the Sugya, the Iyun of Bitul that we're talking about is Bitul of B'shishim, Oy B'meya, Oy B'trei Meya, but now that the Gemara says that Shemitah is Asur Ayidei Karka, B'teilasa Ayidei Karka, there's a new Lomdus. The Gemara is introducing a new Lomdus, meaning the Lomdus on the bottom of Nun. Remember the Gemara that we learned at the end of the week on Nun Chesam and Beis on the bottom, where the Gemara says that Shviya, since it becomes Asur through Karka, it becomes Mutter through Karka. The Lomdus is...
Careful where you're walking, man. I don't want you tripping.
The Lomdus is, one second, that there's a new, since it's growing through the ground, the pri is nischadesh v'niskadel, and it becomes kepanim chadashos through its gidulav. It's not like a taruvos ba'alma. It's not like just a mixture alone. It's not like a mixture alone. It's not a, when you have a taruvos, so then we say you need a certain shiur. But when we're dealing with ground, we're dealing with the new Lomdus of Bitul. The new Lomdus of Bitul is that the fruit was renewed, meaning it's not the same fruit. It's not that the old fruit is batal with the new growth. Since it came through the karka, so it's like it's a panim chadashos. It's not the same fruit. It's not that the new fruit is mevatel the old fruit. It's that it's a panim chadashos. Now, what's the shiur to be able to determine whether it's panim chadashos? The shiur is whether it's roiv. That's what it seems. It seems like if it's the majority of the new fruit, if it's majority new, that will determine, is this panim chadashos, or is there a significant element of the old fruit still intact, so it's not batal. So that is basically three ways to learn this Gemara. The simple way the Ran is learning, the Ran learns the Sugya that we're dealing with regular classic Bitul, kalecha lefi shiurai. The Ran doesn't say we're falling off of it. The Tosfos Rid says no, it seems like we don't need shishim, and maybe a svara to that would be what the Rav Shimon Shkop says, that we only need shishim by min b'minoi in a case where you could be goizer atu min b'sheinoi minoi, but not in a situation where by the very definition it could only be min b'minoi, meaning maybe only min b'minoi that could be confused with min b'sheinoi minoi needs shishim, not if it can't be confused. And then further, there seems to be the way the Chazon Ish learns that the Gemara is falling off of the classic Bitul and is learning a new kind of Bitul, the Bitul of Panim Chadashos, that since it comes from the ground, which by the way would explain the whole svara of ground as opposed to not ground. Remember we were struggling on when we were learning Amud Beis. Well, the same way the petter of the ground is mevatel the isser of the ground, why can't the non-arla be mevatel the arla? But what the Gemara is saying is, when something grows from the ground, it's like a panim chadashos. It completely transforms and elevates the entire. It transforms and elevates the entire amount, the entire growth. Okay, Rabbi, say that's what I got for you today. Okay.
I mean, does a bidafka
have to be rive in that case, according to the Chazon?
It seems that way. It seems that it would have to be rive.
Because why can't it be something that we said, that the leaves turn black, or you're able to pull it out, even if it's not a rive, but it just shows that it's a new berry, and that's enough to be labeled as a new fruit.
Because he would probably say that in his Chiddush. He doesn't say anything.
I hear it seems. It seems the Stipler, when he says over the Chazonish, seems to say that you need roiv. If you want, I could send you more on it. I didn't have the. This is what I got. It seems that you need roiv.
From the sheet that we posted, it doesn't mention anything, which would default to roiv. He's not mentioning anything else.
So Asi is saying, well, maybe all is needed is the leaves turning black, or so that which indicate or
That
being able.
That was what did we fall off that?
You still need that, but the question is, why does that work?
We fell off of it by saying that the onions were crushed originally, but the svara l'chayra is still there. I mean, if you didn't crush the onions, then that would be enough.
Right. Okay, have a good day, everyone. Shkoyach. Hatzlacha.
Recording stopped.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.